Hi you guys, we are on lesson 10 of our soul lessons and soul purpose journey with Sonia Choquette. Open your heart. The lesson is open your heart, and the purpose is to channel more love into the world. Live with an open heart. You cannot grow on a soul level if it is closed. Staying receptive connects you to your spirit, other people, and our Creator, the Lord of life. It channels life force into everyone and honors God. And that's what we do when we're attuned to Reiki, right? We are clearing the channel of that flow of life force energy. And you know, when I worked at that holistic center, oftentimes people would send the difficult customers to me, and they would give me a warning, right? Which is important. It's sometimes, you know, you need that warning, but I learned to channel Reiki through my eyes. Like you're taught to channel Reiki through every pore of your body, really. Life force energy, right? That love, divine love. And it would oftentimes soften the person, because as we learn later in the chapter, what they really are in need of is love, right? So yeah, they would always hand me the the difficult clients, and if I had that resilience and wherewithal, I would just listen and channel Reiki as they were talking to me, and they would slowly, you know, wind down from that heightened state. But I had to learn to do that for sure. And for myself too, right? Channel Reiki for my own intense emotions. Allowing the flow of positive emotions is your natural way as a divine immortal being. Back to lesson 1, you are a divine immortal being. If your heart is open, you receive and give love freely. You are non-judgmental and kind, and feel compassion for all people in the world. You know, that kindness, that compassion. First of all, it's incomplete if it doesn't include yourself, right? We often forget that. But it isn't just like one of the most attractive things. As you mature, what you're really seeking in a partner, across the board, it seems, is that kindness factor, right? Someone who has that capacity to be kind-hearted. Everyone's looking for that, to feel a sense of belonging. And if you're judged, you don't feel that, right? You cherish life and you experience heaven's adoration for you. You are also trusting, tolerant, and patient. Some of life's toughest lessons include those 3 things, right? Most of all, you become more and more courageous because love is the antidote to fear. Isn't that beautiful? When we're loving, we're in a loving state, it's impossible for fear to coincide. They're opposites. So that's just so inspiring to me. Can you sense that? Like when you tune into the fact that you're adored and loved by, you know, source, God, whatever you want to call it. Don't let the term trigger you, right, into defensiveness. Whatever word, because there's bad associations with every term usually, you know, like we all have our own associations. It was hard for me to say God for a while. So don't let that put your defenses up, but like the religious connotations, and a lot of people felt outcasted by their religion. So whatever term you want to use, and it will never encapsulate, you know, the beingness of that, but when you tune into that, the fact that you're adored and loved and cherished, doesn't that just open you? Like, isn't that just, I mean, that feels so healing to me. To open your heart, start by loving yourself. You are a treasured child of God, made in the image and likeness of the divine, which is only love. Therefore, you are also only this quality. To know and accept this will naturally make you supremely receptive. Receptivity can feel very vulnerable. You know, this is something I've had to, I think that there was a time where I was too receptive. I tend to be a psychic sponge. And then I kind of overcompensated when it just became too painful, and completely reverse strategies. And I find that now I'm kind of balancing back. So somewhere in between, you know, that's the swing of the pendulum, isn't it? We tend to overcompensate when one strategy isn't working, and then find our center. And receptivity does feel vulnerable. It is a vulnerability. But it's an important step in the manifestation process. Not step, but state in the manifestation process. Because you can continue to put a vibration out there, but until you get into a receptive state, nothing can come in, right? It's a response to our energy field. It's funny, anytime I'm preparing, really focusing and preparing, and tuning into wisdom and guidance about what to talk about in the chapter and what to focus on in the meditation I'm writing, which crystal to use, when I'm tuning in there, I'm in a receptive state. Sure enough, that's when everyone's reaching out to me, right? That's when calls are coming in, I'm getting more text messages, emails, and I think I'm aware enough to connect it to the fact that I'm really in a receptive state at this point, you know, when I'm doing this work. So, do you find that, like, when you're really, you know, in a creative, you're doing some creative work or whatever it is, tuning into something, that's when everyone kind of reaches out to you? It's really funny. The lie your ego tells, and the source of all your pain, is that you are not made of this holy spark, and consequently not worthy of it. You know, worthiness. Every single human walking this earth has the fear that they are not enough and they will not be loved. These are your universal fears that make us human. And some of us linger there longer than others. Some of us only have glimpses, but we all grapple with this to some extent, to some degree, and oftentimes find ways to compensate, right? And those are some of our most unattractive qualities oftentimes. It's funny, like, the parts of ourselves that we love and own, and I think love is different than, you know, taking pride. Pride can often be egoic, but those aspects of ourselves that we truly love and accept, and really own, I think can be, especially if people tend to see them as weaknesses. If we are able to love that part of ourselves and own it, it really brings peace to others when they're around us, and it's really attractive. People find that very attractive. So, you know, I had the experience of, at some point coming to the conclusion that, in the end, if a relationship doesn't work out, I get to be with myself. Like, I get to be with me. And I've invested so much effort and, you know, time, attention, resources, financial resources too, in myself, that I win at the end of the day because I get to be with me. When I had that realization, it was very recent too. I haven't felt that way, you know, for a long time, like my whole life or anything. No, I was deeply insecure, and particularly romantic relationship would bring out those insecurities of not being good enough, not feeling worthy, not feeling lovable. And then at a certain point, I realized I get to be with me at the end of the day. And I think that's, I don't live there. Like, I sometimes have to, come back to it, right? I still grapple with worthiness and insecurities, but when I had that realization, I felt like it was a breakthrough, right? It was a breakthrough because, you know, I am the source of that love. You know, I'm tuning into the unlimited source of it. And the love I'm feeling isn't coming from the other person. It's actually coming from me. So when I realized that, it brought me a lot of peace in relationship. And it made me feel a lot less of the neediness you know, and the attachment, which is really important. When you realize that the opposite is true and that you are here to be and experience love, you begin to dismantle the defenses, blocks, and barriers that keep you from living this purpose. That reminds me of a post I just shared on Instagram. Are you following me? Urban_empath. We're not here to see through each other. We're here to see each other through. I mean, that just was so moving to me. I was really deeply touched by those words. I've heard that before, but I think the graphic was so beautiful, the colors and everything, and just the words spoke to me on a deeper level as I read it. I think it was yesterday. I really felt that, because I was, you know, with each chapter I find that I'm experiencing a less, like, I'm gaining experiential wisdom, right? Not just through reading the book or creating the meditation or whatever, but I'm having an experience, just like when my glasses broke for the clearing our vision chapter, and you know, having the guidance to guide my friend into tuning into her inner knowing. Like, each week I find, I don't know if this is happening for you, I certainly hope it is, where you're having lessons show up for you in the world. We're magnetizing them by committing to this process, you know? And it was very clear to me when I had an interaction with a customer at work who was really defensive. One of those people that, you know, I think we talked about this before, loves to debate, you know, just wants to be right. But it wasn't just about being right. It was about being argumentative, just for argument's sake. I could tell it was just, he was just trying to hook me into debate. And that's one way people siphon our energy. You know, I don't know that they do it consciously, and maybe they just find it fun, but it's one way women get hooked into, you know, really getting into our masculine energy, you know. Like for me, I want to communicate to understand, or to share, or, you know, to get to know somebody. I'm never really communicating to debate or argue my case. I'm actually not very particularly good at that. It just wastes a lot of my mental energy. I don't enjoy that kind of communication. So I kind of had to gracefully bow out. But it helped me see how it's not really helpful for helping someone see your side of things anyway, is it? Because it just, you know, creates resistance, and that's kind of counterproductive if what you're trying to do is influence somebody, right? Coaches learn this right off the bat. The most important thing is build rapport with somebody. And this helps them feel safe in your presence. Create a safe space somehow, right? By building rapport, or, you know, find some way that helps them not feel defensive, because, you know, oftentimes you're working with deep-seated issues and you can't have that those defenses up to tap into that. So, and to work with someone's subconscious, it's not really good if they're defensive. So you learn to encourage people to open by being open yourself, right? Being open-hearted yourself, and energetically you can encourage that, building rapport by mirroring, or whatever it is. But just like throwing information at somebody and like trying to control them and get them to see what you see, I just don't find that valuable. I don't know, but I guess, you know, there are people that are good at debating and they gain confidence by doing so. I just tend to think, wouldn't it be more effective to sort of combine data? Like, if you have one experience and these are your life experiences, I don't want you to not trust that because I had a lot different life. Like, how about I share with you what I see and what I've gone through, and you share with me, and we're like, interesting, what's similar about the human experience, or what can I learn from you that I haven't experienced myself? I find that more worthwhile and valuable. So I don't really understand. It's a blind spot for me, maybe. I just don't understand that point of view. But he ended up being a really great customer in the end. So, like, very generous, and grateful and appreciative of, you know, my service in the end. So that taught me a valuable lesson too, because I painted him as like someone I just needed to get away from and disliked because of that energy. But in the end, and then sort of bowed out gracefully and tried to removed myself from the situation, the conversation. But in the end, he ended up being a very giving, generous spirit, which then I also thought, oh, but that is also more comfortable for him, isn't it? Giving is more comfortable for him because receptivity is very vulnerable. So I kind of associated with that, and maybe that's a strange creative thing my brain did, but sometimes I make connections that maybe are stretching it a bit. But the fact that he was so generous and giving, maybe also was, you know, an indication of the fact that he wasn't really that comfortable with receiving. So so that was the light attribute, right? The positive attribute of that. Not being able to receive me in conversation, but very generous in the material world and with gratitude. So more comfortable with giving. So instead of just seeing it as all bad, I was able to see the good in it too. So maybe that was part of the lesson for me. I just made that connection. So maybe that was part of the lesson for me. Can you see that for yourself, right? Like maybe you're more comfortable with giving. Do you overgive? You know, and then wonder why there's no savings account, right? We do this sometimes, right? Getting comfortable with receiving blessings too. Okay, where are we at? So we talked about, if you release your defenses, you naturally send out a positive, harmonious, peaceful, and caring vibration to the world, which helps stabilize the planet. This energy also eases other people's suffering, which at its root is always due to a lack of love, right? We talked about that. Customers that came in and were crabby and sometimes verbally abusive, right? They were in pain and they needed love. And I could see that very clearly. So when I had the resources, I was able to give that. And it's not even my resources, right? Because it's from an unlimited source. It was me tuning into an unlimited source and receiving it, so I was able to share it and overflow. But sometimes it's hard to tune into that, especially when we're stressed and constricted, right? So I wasn't perfect. Your heart has an energetic shield that you can engage to protect you whenever you are subjected to extreme pain, anxiety, or fear. I think I've engaged that a lot in my life. But then, when you have that defense up, the only people, like in New York City, that was up a lot of the time. I think part of being here is coming back to receptivity, coming back to my divine feminine yin receptive energy. Both men and women have it, right? That receptive energy. Both men and women have masculine energy. Feminine women are just more comfortable in that feminine, divine feminine essence. Part of coming back to hometown is also making peace with that. I'm back in my hometown. This is the first video you're watching. And coming back from New York City, which I felt pushed me into my masculine energy a lot. And so coming back here, I'm making peace with my hometown, which is connected to mother and family constellation work, which is connected to your divine feminine essence. And that's receptivity for both men and women. And that receptivity is required for receiving the blessings that we're working on manifesting here. Yeah, I think New York City pushed me into having that shield up. And whenever you have the shield up, stay away, get away from me. Sound familiar, New Yorkers? Or anyone in a big city, right? Get away from me, stay away from me. You know, we're protective. We're very protective because there's people trying to get our attention and, you know, ask us for things constantly. Get your attention constantly. It's just for me, it became overstimulating. But what happens is then when you have the defenses up, your shields up, the only people that then come in are the people that don't honor your boundaries, right? Because the people that have good intentions, that are of integrity, that are mature as far as boundary work, they've worked on their own boundaries, they can sense others' boundaries, and they respect other people's boundaries because they respect their own, are going to see that you're giving off a vibe of get away from me, and they're not going to be able to enter. So you may find that with that defensive energy up, shields up, only people that want to step all over your boundaries with their dirty feet are the ones that come in, right? Are you finding that to be true? This could be the cause, right? So working on lowering those defenses by tuning in to the fact that you are a divine immortal being, which means you are love, right? And owning more of your love. But this shield is useful when you are facing trauma, but it is not intended to be kept in place permanently. If you erect such armor, even when it is called for, you cut your soul off from everything, including your creator, your source, right? You're tuning everything out. We advise you, the emissaries, we advise you to close your heart only under severe circumstances, and even then only for the shortest period of time possible. And you might ask, well, how do I prevent myself? Because it's unconscious often, right? So what can I do when I become aware that's what I'm doing? And they're saying to stay receptive under duress, pray for support from God, angels, and guides, and forgive those who hurt you. Letting go of blame safeguards your feeling nature better than anything and heals all wounds. And we'll be addressing that in meditation later. An outpouring of pure adoration is the most potent healing vibration on earth. With an open heart, every obstacle in your life eventually gives way because nothing in the world can resist this energy indefinitely. That's a very lovely thought. Pure adoration. I think pure without covert intention, right? Is really potently healing. Love recruits support and enthusiasm from every corner of the planet and the universe. It is also the secret to charismatic power, for the more you love, the more energetically attractive you become. You therefore begin to draw everything that you need directly to you. This is what we're working on, right? We'll be focusing on that in meditation as well. So I'm really excited to guide you through that, and then to listen back for myself, because I want to tune into that too. You may have experienced many moments when you loved others without reserve. Your heart opens readily to those closest to you, your family, children, and intimate friends. It is also receptive to people you are naturally attracted to, those who appeal to your outer senses, including your eyes, and flatter your ego. It's true. It's funny the weird tactics we sometimes have in romantic relationship because we're overcompensating. It was a research study, or I read it in a book or something, where someone was talking about how, in relationship, a relationship will end for whatever reason. And we'll associate it with something we did, something we said, the way we showed up, whatever it is. And then we'll say that's the reason. Well, there we go. That did it. And then the next experience, we'll do the opposite, right? We'll completely overcompensate and do the exact opposite, and then that won't work either. And so we'll continue to just kind of like throw out, the idea that simply just giving someone love could be enough, or owning love, right? Or owning the fact that we are love and sharing that from an overflowing point of view could be enough. We start doing weird things like convincing people, or and I think I really had to put a lot of that into perspective myself, and that comes from not owning, the power of the fact that you are love, and not being able to receive, not being in a receptive state, especially for women, and overcompensating due to those fears of not being worthy of love, because we forget that we are love. It's so tricky, isn't it? These positive experiences begin to encourage you to love more deeply and broadly. Each positive encounter opens you a little more, until eventually you learn to embrace all humanity as your family. It's true, the more I find that the more I'm able to kind of let go of strategy or tactics and simply love and respect somebody, the more positive the outcome, even if it ends, right? Even if it ends, there's still mutual adoration and respect. And I don't think I've ever had an experience where it just ended really badly and I never spoke to the person again. I don't think I've ever had that experience. Unless it was like it was just a blip and we never even really met or whatever. Like, I've had that experience. But like if I actually had a relationship with somebody, like even just, talking, flirting or whatever, even if it wasn't necessarily dating, it never feels like it ends in a bad way. But also because I was too unconditionally loving. But maybe that's for a later time. I was a little too forgiving at times, I think. You become more and more receptive when the ego is no longer the primary guiding voice in your life, but rather when you are led by your higher self, right? That's this process we're learning to really let that voice be the loudest, and to guide us and live through us, higher self. Reflect on the feeling of pure receptive love. For example, imagine the birth of a baby. From the moment you first set your eyes upon a newborn, your heart is moved and opens immediately. They're completely vulnerable, right? And can only receive. A beloved pet has a similar effect. Animals are extremely effective in removing your defenses and seducing you into fully opening up your feeling center, because they give you unconditional affection and devotion sometimes. Oftentimes. Some are moody. Even the most hardened and self-protective people soften and warm to such powerful emotions. Yeah, I have a lot of love for animals. I wish I could have a pet now. It really is healing, soothing. I had just recalled, I trained with John Beaulieu. He wrote Human Tuning, and he teaches you how to I took a sound and music facilitator training, and he was one of the main facilitators, and he talked about how, humans have these cells on our tailbone that vibrate almost like they're wagging when we're happy. And when our dog greets us when we come home and they wag their tail, it models for us that movement, and then it triggers that response in us. So then we become happy, which is one way. Having a dog is therapeutic, is it models happiness for us. I thought that was really fascinating. I of course don't have the science precise and accurate, but it was something to that effect. And I just thought, I just remembered him telling us that. So yeah, it's so interesting. But yeah, and it triggers that response in us to want to care for and give love to, you know, to another sentient being that doesn't have any ulterior motives, right? It's just unconditionally love. And even when, you know, maybe our cat scratches us or something, we don't take it personally. But when a human does it, we take it so personally. It's so interesting. The ability to allow the flow of emotions becomes more challenging as you experience tremendous loss, pain, or abuse in this or past incarnations. It's true, but overcoming and seeing the loss, the pain, healing from the abusive patterning, the healing of it makes you even stronger, doesn't it? Because then anything you face can never really measure up to that. It's you know, oftentimes I'll come into an experience that would have in the past devastated me, but because I gave myself that healing. Remember, when I went in my Saturn return, I had that terrible breakup. I felt shattered. I think we talk about this later. Yeah, when a person undergoes a sudden trauma, the soul can become fragmented and actually leave the body in pieces. Thus the expression, I was shattered. This is actually a quite accurate description of what happens when your divine essence is seriously injured. When it splinters and exits the physical self, your heart shuts down. Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like when I had my first really big heartbreak. Because I had loss and breakups before that, but nothing so serious. And my heart was really shattered. And coincidentally, that's when I had my first Reiki session. And a lot of stuff was released in that session, a lot of emotional debris and things I hadn't addressed. And because of course it was just triggering wounding that was already in place, this breakup. But, you know, I felt like the shattered pieces of my broken heart, when they were healed, became this strong, resilient aspect of myself, and grew in strength as I overcame more and more of these situations that reflected each other. For me, I can easily see it in romantic relationship. It follows the same patterns, and I become stronger and stronger and stronger, and to the point where I'm able to say, no matter what happens, Rachel, you get to be with you. And I think that's the strongest place you can be at. And I hope that inspires you to see it that way too. The fact that you're investing in yourself and you're healing yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's who you're with. You spend your entire life with yourself, you know, you're with you. So I had to learn not to come out of myself and associate the love as coming from another person, right? It's not. So when a perceived abandonment happens, right, it's not as devastating. It still hurts. I still have to grieve the loss of it, but I've seen it before. I've been there before. I know I can overcome it. I've done it many times, so I'm good. And I get to be with me, and you don't. So, so I do feel sorry for you, but I get to be with me. I was talking to a friend, my friend Rob, years ago when I was involved with this younger man, and it was this tumultuous relationship, and I just couldn't figure it out, and it would just devastate me, because it was one of those situations where, you know, they act like they're in love with you until you kind of decide, all right, maybe I'll give you a chance, and then maybe I'll give you another chance, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, you just kind of wanted to prove to yourself that you could get back with me. Got it. And I just couldn't understand that. Like, I didn't understand that mentality. So I didn't get it. So it created suffering for me. I was like, wait a minute, but why did he change so much? And I was talking to my friend Rob about it, and I was crying, and I ended up saying, like, I think part of it is I just feel bad for him because he doesn't get to be with me. And I was saying that crying, and he's like, all right, wait a minute, let me just repeat that back, because that was, let's just laugh about that, because that was ridiculous. I was like, I'm serious, I feel bad for him that he doesn't get to be with me, because I felt like I had so much love to share, I had so much love to give. It took me a while to understand that over-giving is a turnoff, right? You think, I have all this love to give you, but it's like, well, if you're never receptive, it's not attractive. You can't magnetize anything. You know, there's got to be, in relationship, if you're establishing a solid partnership, you got to strike some kind of balance between giving and receiving. You don't have to give the same things, but you both need to be giving to some capacity and receiving in some capacity. Otherwise, it destabilizes the situation. So that's why it just doesn't make sense to invest in somebody who's not investing in you. It's just illogical, because you're creating something that's just not going to sustain, right? It's just not going to happen. But yeah, he totally laughed at me when I said that, but I meant it. But I finally got it, right? That was kind of silly, but I finally got it. It is obvious when people's hearts are shut down and they are not in their body, because their eyes are dull and their energy feels stiff, cold, dense, or empty. They have no warmth. This reminds me of I think I stopped into a fast food restaurant to get a drink after I worked out one day in Queens, Flushing area. And I remember this girl, this was years ago, but I'll never forget, because she was standing at the counter, you know, under those terrible fluorescent lights. And her eyes were just so glazed, and she just looked almost like a zombie. Like, I can only imagine, you know, this busy restaurant, this busy fast food place. And I could tell, like, she was probably a sensitive or intuitive or artist suffering through this job. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. I felt so bad for her. She looked so, like, so disconnected, right? So, you know, disconnected from vitality, from love, from everything. That glazed over look, it was really frightening to see. I'll never forget that. And I imagine that environment will do that to you, and feeding yourself that food, right? She probably was feeding herself that food too, consistently. And when you eat food that doesn't have life in it, it takes away our vitality there too. If the ego is in control, the jaw is usually clenched, the lips are pursed, the arms are folded or stiff, and the eyes do not make contact. I can always tell when I've triggered somebody, right? Sometimes I tease a little too hard, especially at work when no one expects it, right? Because in service, people just expect you to, bartender, you know, and not tell them the truth, not be honest. But I've never really been like that. I'm pretty honest. Like, if someone asks me how I'm doing, I tell them the truth. I'm like, I'm sorry, I know you really didn't want an honest answer there. And when we start to have a conversation, I can tell if I've triggered their ego, or maybe I've teased a little too hard, or, you know, they weren't really interested in having a conversation, which I'm cool with. Like, I'm an introvert, so it's me kind of, you know, forcing myself to bring out the inner extrovert at work. So I can tell when they've been triggered into their ego, when they fold their arms, look at their phone, you know, furrow their brow, you know. So yeah, those are very good indications that the ego has been triggered. You can call your soul back into your body through the power of intention. Set healthy boundaries around yourself to create a safe vessel in which your spirit can reside. Boundaries, right? Like that unconditional love I wanted to give everyone all the time. You forget when you're learning about unconditional love and you're working on harnessing it, that it starts with yourself. That's something we never emphasize, do we? We're like, how can you telling that person to that you're not interested in this conversation, say, right? How can that be unconditional love? Well, because I'm loving myself through boundaries, right? It's got to start with me. I mean, there's probably a better way to say it, but than that. But it's got to start with my own boundaries and my own self-love. It's got to be I've got to be overflowing with self-love. We'll work on that in meditation. Otherwise we might be attached to it and expect something in return. That's not unconditional, right? You may also retrieve your essence through movement, exercise, and physical activity. This raises the vibration of the body, flushes out negative energies that are attached to it, and makes a clear space for the soul to return to. However, the greatest and most powerful way to recover this lost part of yourself is through self-love. Exactly, right? But you do feel better when you're working out and detoxing, right? The lymph system doesn't have a pump, so we gotta pump it somehow through movement. For me, it's dancing, going to the gym, stretching, a little bit of yoga here and there. But I also had a healer work me through some intense emotions, discharging them, right? Because if you have charged emotions inside, they move you to want to inject them into somebody else instead of just transmuting them or discharging them. And there's something called core energetics. She would give me a foam bat and have me just kind of hit a pillow and make primal sounds. I would always resist it. I never wanted to do it. It felt so uncomfortable and weird to me. But I would always feel better after, just getting that charged energy off. Especially during those times where it's snowing and your car doesn't get around in the snow and you can't go to the gym. Having a way to discharge that energy, instead of injecting it into the next person, right? Or loving yourself through ways that, tuning in through ways that are balancing, right? That will either help you if you are low in vitality, they will bring you vitality, or if you have too much charged energy, they will pacify that, right? Which is meditation, yoga, things that really even that out. Working with certain crystals, absorbing crystals, a nice calcite layout, right? Different colored calcite for each chakra. It's a great way to get rid of some charged up energy. It's a great layout for empaths because calcite is absorbent and it'll absorb some of that charged energy off of your field. I tend to do that. The spirit in you is greater than any injury you have ever experienced. Once you connect and identify with this essential aspect as the real you, it recollects its lost pieces and begins to fully return. We'll work on that in meditation. To call your soul home, tap into your divine light, love yourself, and claim your right to live peacefully in your body, free from invasion by others. That's how we prevent invasion, right? That's how we prevent, we embody, we ground into our bodies. I do have the tendency, many of us do, who are artists, visionaries, innovators, be more in tune with the higher frequencies and want to come up and out and live in that dreamy place because that's what the source of the vision that we're pulling from, right? But it's important to align down to and anchor into our bodies and anchor into Mother Earth so that we can bring them down into the 3D physical world. And in New York, when I first started that metaphysical bookstore, I was much more prone to psychic attack, psychic vampirism, energetic vampirism, because I was not embodied. I was dissociating from my body, and this makes you more susceptible, right? Also, those parts of yourself that you aren't loving, that you aren't accepting of, that you're resisting and pushing out, also makes you, those your shadow aspects that you're not owning, make us susceptible too. So owning, accepting, loving yourself, and embodying. Because your cells carry memory patterns of past injuries, body work such as massage therapy, Reiki, healing touch, and reflexology are extremely effective for clearing those imprints and paving the way for your sacred essence to return. It's really true. If you've never had a session, your first session will stir up a lot of things, right? That's what happened to me. I cried so much my first maybe 5 sessions. They were all me sobbing. But of course, I had just gone through that terrible breakup and was shattered. So I was healing some intense emotions. And probably belief patterns and thought forms and things that created the experience to begin with. So, and healing a heart is very worthwhile process, but it can be very painful. So know that the first time, and if I haven't had a massage, like if you haven't ever had a massage, you don't know what you're missing. So you're just living with your tension. And then as soon as you start having massages, like I would get deep tissue massages frequently in New York, and I had my favorite masseuse, and it was deep tissue, and if I hadn't gone for a while, he was pretty strong, it would hurt, it was painful. But if I would go regularly, it kept my muscles from getting so tense and rigid, So it is important to kind of maintain that. I have to get better at that. Maintaining that. I go to meditation because I like to be alone. Being alone feels healing for me. So my go-to is meditation, but and probably closer to visualization than meditation, because meditation implies emptiness, right? Tuning into the nothingness, right? And mine tend to be visualization. So another powerful tool for opening the heart is to forgive those who have hurt you. This feels like an impossible assignment for the false self, the ego that holds on to injuries forever. Oh God, this is a work in progress. But that's associated with the fire in our system. When we have an exacerbation of water, we are attached. There's a lot of attachment to people, things. A healthy way of relating is through bonding, but when there's an exacerbation of water, like say you have a lot of water in your astrology chart, I do, you have a tendency to attach. A remedy, medicine for water, for exacerbated water. Did you listen to Transcendence Through the Elements? I talked about that on that radio show. A remedy is fire, getting in touch with the passion. Fire is also associated with forgiveness, which isn't really intuitive. A lot of people think, how is fire forgiveness? But it makes sense if you think about it. Again, I learned that from John Beaulieu. Fire, it purifies, right? Fire purifies. It boils off the excess water as well, which we associate with attachment. It can heal that, because we can attach to emotional state too. We can attach to toxic emotions, toxic people. There's that attachment. So burning up some of that extra water, boiling it off with our inner fire, can be very healing and purifying. So we'll be tuning into that a little bit in meditation. However, forgiveness is not an activity of the ego, but a gift of the spirit. Have you ever heard the saying, to err is human, to forgive divine? It is true. When you absolve someone, you gain access to your divine immortal self. And doesn't it just feel more peaceful to not be harboring those toxic emotions inside? And sometimes it's a process. Sometimes you're honoring yourself by allowing yourself to go through the process of healing, the process of forgiveness. Sometimes it's not I forgive you. Sometimes that's disingenuous and you're cutting yourself off from your genuine feelings. Sometimes it is a process, and allowing yourself to go through it and just saying, okay, I'm willing to show up however this wants to process out. I'm willing to experience it with the intention of forgiveness in the end, right? So that you're free. Because it's like the devil card in tarot. Forgive me, I'm studying tarot. The devil card, being bound by attachment, being bound by toxicity, right? Addiction, addictive patterning. Sometimes these toxic emotions can be addictive because it's another way to escape. We escape through pleasure and fantasy, but we can also escape accountability by blaming other people. You release yourself from the dark chains of your ego, devil card, and of anyone else's. The more you connect with inner wisdom, the stronger your soul becomes. So letting go of blame not only becomes possible, but something you desire, right? You ever start eating really healthy and then, you find that you're less willing to put up with toxic people, situations, circumstances? Like, health aligns. You can align to health in every area. Or maybe you have a breakthrough emotionally with a healer or counselor, and all of a sudden you want to eat healthier or go to the gym because it just feels in alignment with this new state, because everything aligns. Forgive yourself for forgetting that you are a light being, and for allowing yourself to be manipulated and influenced by the ego-based projections you encountered or put forth as you were learning to love. So many illusions, right? Cutting through those illusions. The moon card. We notice that it is easier for you to forgive others than yourself. It's so true. I was thinking about this today. Often it's not on our radar. We're just so used to abusing ourselves, right? And I have released a lot of toxic patterns like perfectionism, which is self-abusive, right? It's like, here's the standard you'll never hit, but you're not worthy until you get there. Way to abuse yourself, you played yourself, Rachel. I do this to myself when I'm just tired and clumsy, and maybe I'll drop the lid to my vitamins or something, and I'm like, Rachel. I just yell at myself, and that's when I'm like, I catch myself and I'm like, oh, why are you like, you don't have compassion for yourself sometimes. And if you don't have compassion for yourself, it leaks over into other people, which is why self-love and compassion for self allows you to give that to other people. Self-judgment is the last vestige of your ego as it tries to exert control and keep you from expanding your soul. Ego is terrified. That's one of the things I was arguing with that man about, the customer, who, I don't even know if he really thought this through. He was just argumentative, but he was talking about the brain's importance over the heart, and I'm not good with debating, so I didn't even think about what to say to him, but I was just like, okay, well, I have work to do. But thinking about that, like, the ego wants us, or the brain wants us to survive, right? The brain, if you just tune into the brain, it's just going to keep you in that limited thinking pattern. Innovation comes from the heart center. And that's kind of what my point was, but, I wasn't able to really say it coherently. Because I was so, like, my resistance was so engaged. Releasing yourself from this criticism is an indication that you are advancing to higher levels of awareness. And perfectionism is when we put the critic on the pedestal, right? Brene Brown talks about how women are much more susceptible to this than men, but men go through this too, about having this perfect ideal woman that we're trying to become. This is who we want to be. We believe we have to be perfect to be loved, and we have this standard for ourselves, and then we put it onto men, right? We project that onto men. But putting that in check, and you know, it's also necessary if you want to, when you're on the road to success, when you're starting to have success, right? Which is why this is in this book, because often a lot of us are manifesting success in one area or another, and you know, sometimes with success comes recognition and sometimes criticism. So you have to understand how to put that in check. I would get engaged and hooked in to internet trolling, right? Argumentative people. And I would engage and I would try to pacify the situation or explain myself. And I just had to learn that not to waste my energy in that way, especially if people aren't asking questions from a curious place, if they're being judgmental, critical. I either have learned to laugh it off and not even address it, and just be like, let them have their freedom of speech, I'm fine with it, or delete it, block them. I don't engage anymore because my mental energy is a precious resource and I don't waste it. I don't waste it like that. But I also don't fear it anymore. I don't fear criticism anymore because I know it's going to happen and I've had to go through it already. And I no longer put the critic on the pedestal. I used to do that. You know, I would have friends who were like music snobs, and it would make me feel really inferior and really, it would trigger me. I would feel like they know more than me. They know better than me. They know everything and I don't know anything. And it took away a lot of my confidence because I allowed it to, because I put the critic on the pedestal because of my perfectionism. And, you know, I no longer allow people that aren't, like Brene Brown said, she really, really inspired me in this way. People that aren't in the arena don't get a say anymore. You can have your opinion, but if you're on the sidelines and watching and you're not really in the arena, you don't get a say. Your opinion, it just matters much less, because constructive criticism is one thing, but it's much easier to sit on the sidelines and tell someone else how to live their life, or how, you know, what would be better, and how badly they suck or whatever. But if you're not putting yourself out there, you don't have compassion for that person. You know, you probably have much less compassion for the fact that they're humbling themselves enough to put themselves out there to begin with. And so I found that inspiring. That gave me courage, right? Because it put it in check. It's like, oh, it's not really about the critic, is it? No. It's about living on purpose, in love, and lifting other people up. That has to be the purpose, not being perfect. Because I won't be, I never will be. So that was inspiring to me. I hope that inspires you too, that idea. Forgiving yourself comes more easily with prayer and a connection to your higher self. The ability to readily let go and rarely take offense is one of the greatest demonstrations that you are mastering your soul's lessons. Oh, I have a coworker like this. This is getting really long. This is a long chapter, sorry. Or I mean, you're welcome. Just kidding. I have a coworker who's like that. Anytime we get criticism for our job, he's just like, okay, thanks. Mm-hmm. And then just does what he wants anyway. He's just not engaged or hooked in by that. He's just so cool about it. And I get defensive and I get triggered, and I'm like, I feel like, why aren't they grateful, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like I have to defend myself. And I'm learning a lot. He's much younger than me too. So I'm really learning from him, his modeling of like, to just, it's not that serious, you know? Sometimes I'm surrounded by people that give me that message. It's not that serious. Why is it high stakes, Rachel? It's not that serious. Why are you? And I'm like, it's probably some of that inner perfectionist coming out. Where the criticism, I can almost not handle it. So I have some good models, people modeling some really healthy traits for me, which is nice. And I know I'm being guided in human form, right? The final step to opening the heart is to view everything and everyone from the perspective of your greater consciousness and realize that you are all students struggling to be free of your fragile and insecure egos. You are at various levels and degrees of awakening in this teaching, so take nothing personally. One of the 5 agreements, right? Well, there's the book, The 4 Agreements, and then making up the book, The 5th Agreement. But I had a spiritual teacher who would come in to visit me at the metaphysical bookstore, and then also the holistic center I worked at. He looked like a wizard, the long white hair, long white beard, and kind of a mysterious fellow. And like the first time he met me, he was like, "Are you singing?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Are you singing?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Why?" And he's like, "My guides told me you're a singer." And I was like, "Oh, okay." This is my first encounter with him, okay? And he would come to visit me, and I am a singer, if you don't know. So it just kind of was like, I was always having encounters like that with people just telling me about myself. But this guy, he would coach me in certain ways, and he told me, no matter what someone says to you, say thank you. Thank you. If they say, you know, your makeup looks really nice, thank you. Thank you. Or, you know, have you gained weight? You look like you're getting fatter. Thank you. Thank you. And to just not, I mean, that sounds passive aggressive. That's not how he meant it. He meant just like, don't take it in. Just don't take anything personally. I mean, that's counter to being receptive though. So I don't know, but he would always just say, that was one way to not take things personally, right? Other people's feedback, because it's usually based on their own point of view. It has nothing to do with you anyway. So, view everything and everyone with compassion and love, beginning with yourself. Don't ever forget about yourself, right? We often do that. Separate behavior from people, loving them and forgiving their actions. No longer hash out, condemn, or hurt others out of fear. Almost done. And know the difference between having a boundary and asserting a boundary and punishing somebody, right? Like, you have to own your emotions. You have to manage those. And, you know, how the other person responds is not on you. That's something else you can't take personally. If you know you came from a loving place and you were honoring and respecting yourself by asserting a boundary, and you managed it, and you said, this is about me, and you know, I just don't do well with this kind of behavior, or that word triggers me, or whatever it is, just know that a healthy relationship will be able to withstand those moments, right? If it's based on mutual investment and connection, and if you're able to own your point of view and own, you know, where you're coming from, and not blame. Because oftentimes when we do it, we're giving blaming energy and saying, when you do that, this is what happens. And we're giving blaming energy. So always come from the intention of, I'm just sharing that this is what happens when, you know, when I experience that. And it can often prevent arguments and battles, and it depends on the other person's ability to not take things personally too. Like, it takes two, right? So it can be challenging, but the only way to really have respect is to respect yourself, right? And to not just appease others and believe that that's unconditional love, because it's not if it doesn't include you. It's just not. If you do have a lapse of judgment, step back from the offending situation and reconnect with your divine essence. Right? Take some breaths, take some sweeping breaths, you know? As you inhale, imagine the breath going from the crown of your head, the top of your head, to the bottoms of your feet. And as you exhale, imagine it coming back up and just sweeping out the excess energy. That can help with charged energy too, that intentional breath. An open heart is the gateway to peace, and achieving this receptivity is a strong sign that your soul is growing tremendously. Yeah, how long can we maintain that, right? And it's also a practice mindfulness too, to be mindful of when, and a strategy in the human design system, right? For anyone who is familiar with that, I'm a manifesting generator, which means the best strategy for me is to wait to respond. So look up human design and look up your chart. You need the same details as if you were looking at your birth chart, looking up your birth chart, birth time, location, date. HumanDesignAmerica.com. I'm not sure if that site's still up. But if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, your best strategy is a wait to respond, which means staying in a receptive state, right? Expanding your energy field and opening to allow others to come in and approach you. Because what I learned from this system is that if I approach, it can be too intense for some people. It can just be way too intense. I can come across as very intense, which is great for reaching the back row of the large venue if I'm singing or acting or whatever, you know, but not for one-on-one interaction. Not so much. So my best strategy is to open to receive people, which is a much more powerful place to be, right? To be sitting on your throne as the Empress. Another tarot reference, sorry. Sitting on your throne as the Empress, receiving, right? Saying yes or no to things. That's a much more powerful way of being. And it takes the pressure off, right? Because opportunities can come in to you. And of course, I don't always just sit there passively. I mean, that's actually not very easy for me to do at all. But sometimes that strategy, when I'm mindful enough to utilize it and remember, is just the most effective thing for me. And each chart has a different strategy that really works, right? An open heart is the gateway to peace. I think I said this. And achieving this receptivity is a strong sign that your soul is growing tremendously. Every step you take on this path is significant and powerfully healing for both you and the planet. That's what this whole lesson's about, is, you know, owning the fact that we're love and allowing it to pour out, opening your heart to love, and then allowing that energy, that vibration to pour out generously into the world, right? And that's how we heal the world. We change ourselves. So we'll be doing that in meditation. So that's this lesson, you guys. I hope that moved you. This is a big one. So sorry, that's a long video. The crystal I recommend is rhodochrosite. It's just the perfect one for this lesson. I have a few pieces here. It helps you shift out of blame and shame and into the light of love and compassion. And this includes self-love and compassion for self, right? Here's another one. Heals tendency to punish yourself, heals suffering in all relationships and past karmic debts, right? Which helps for forgiveness, burning up those attachments. Rhodochrosite is just so beautiful. It's like that pink with the lacy white in there. Supports you in releasing the self-blame that contributes to self-sabotage, right? We often sabotage ourselves when we don't believe we're worthy of something. When we forget that we're a spark of the divine, we are love. It also reprograms your emotional body to open and receive joy. Again, or for the first time. This light is pretty bright. There we go. That's rhodochrosite. One of my favorites. It's just one of my very absolute favorite crystals. But again, I have so many favorites, so I probably say that every time. The essential oil I recommend for this lesson is thyme. Thyme promotes patience and tolerance. I diffused it all last night. I'm diffusing it now. Promotes, and you know, it's funny, it's called thyme and it promotes patience, right? Influences the surfacing and release of old trapped stagnant feelings that keep you stuck in the same toxic emotional patterns, right? So it's great for that emotional release. Helps you address the emotions that close off the heart, such as hate, resentment, anger, even rage, right? So you're processing those emotions out. Assists the heart in forgiving, which transforms a closed off, hating, raging heart into an open, loving, and patient one over time. Inhalation over time, right? That's how we work with the oils for spiritual issues. We work with low dose. We do that through inhalation. Powerful cleanser of emotional body, enabling us to move forward with greater understanding and openness, allowing love, success, and joy into our bubble. And that's time. We love time. Okay? So those are my recommendations for this lesson. Go ahead and drop some oil onto your eye pillow. You don't have to use thyme. Thyme's not for everybody. It's a pretty herbaceous smell. You may just be using one oil to program, right? Dropping it right into your eye pillow. This is my eye pillow. I tend to use the same oil on my eye pillow. If you do put it on your eye pillow, it absorbs quickly, but you may want to put it where it's close to your nose and not where your eyes go. It goes on your eyes. I tend to use the same oil on my eye pillow and diffuse the others. I put a little blend of like frankincense and myrrh, diluted, so that it lasts longer in a carrier oil, fractionated coconut. And that's what I use for meditation, a general meditation. Also, there's some sandalwood in that blend that I do. But whatever oil you're using, what we're doing is we're anchoring it into this experience so that whenever you inhale it and maybe say one of the affirmations, it recalls the experience of this meditation. Okay? So rhodochrosite resonates with the heart. Of course, connected to the emotions, right? And you may want to put that in your receptive hand. This is my clear quartz, you know, the one giving you the finger. Sorry, I love this sassy little quartz. I program it by holding it in my giving hand, right? Which some people say is always your right, but you might want to feel that out for yourself. Both hands do both. One just has a tendency to be better at giving. One has a tendency to be better at receiving. Just feel that out for yourself. And yeah, so you've dropped some oils onto your pillow or you've started your diffuser. And the pillow actually helps with desensitization, right? Or taking away the stimulus of light so that we're resensitized when we take it off. And it really helps us go deeper into meditation, get into a deeper state. So go ahead, put your mat on the floor, lie down, or lay on the couch or the bed, recline, whatever you need to do. If you're seated and there's a back to your seat, you're going to want your tailbone to go the whole way back so that it aligns your spine. Or sit in meditation with an aligned spine. Sometimes people find that having like a Zafu Zabuton set helps with sitting on the floor and meditating. So and feel yourself giving whatever's holding you up all your weight. Maintain an aligned spine, but don't help what's ever holding you up hold you up in any way. Just give it all your weight. Notice any areas that want to pull up or still have some tension. You might want to breathe into those areas, gather the tension, and release with the exhale. With the inhale, you may want to move the muscle in the direction of the tension, amplifying that, and then exhale and release it, which helps it release more deeply into relaxation. And we're going to start our intentional breath. We're going to inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and pause for 4, and I'll lead you through it. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale out the mouth. Pause. Inhale through the nose. Inhaling love, peace, gratitude, joy, and hold. And exhale out the mouth. Any emotional debris. Pause. Inhale through the nose. Hold. As you hold, feel stagnant emotional debris surface to release, and exhale it out the mouth. Pause. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale out the mouth. Pause. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale out the mouth. Pause. One more time. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale out the mouth. Pause. And breathe normally and naturally. You may want to continue breathing in through the nose to perceive the oil, and exhale out the mouth so you're not breathing it out. But whatever allows for the most relaxation. We're working with the affirmation. I open my heart and channel more love into the world. I open my heart and channel more love into the world. I open my heart and channel more love into the world. Notice any aspects of yourself that resist this state of openness. Where in your body is that showing up? It may show up as tension, pain, discomfort, or even constriction. Breathe into that area, allowing your breath to gather and collect the resistant energy. Then release it with the exhale. And continue to do so for a few breath cycles. You may notice yourself feeling more and more relaxed. with each breath. In this state of receptivity, you're more in tune with the guidance and wisdom of your higher self. Ask your higher self to show you the people in your life for which you harbor blame, resentment, anger, rage. Allow your higher self to bring these toxic ties to your awareness. This may include yourself. Ask your higher self if you are ready to release these poisonous emotions in order to allow more love and joy in. What's ready to be released now? Feel the fires of forgiveness purify every cell of your body from the toxic emotions you've carried for far too long. It's time now to let them go and move forward without this heavy burden. These emotions were only poisoning you. As the fire of forgiveness purifies every cell of your body, you begin to notice how much lighter and clearer you feel, and a wave of divine peace and love washes over you, replacing all of the unwanted emotions that were just released. Feel that divine peace and love enter every cell of your body. Notice the shift that occurs on every level, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, as you embody this divine essence and acknowledge that this is your true self. Let's anchor this in with the oil. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale through the mouth. Pause. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale through the mouth. Pause. One more time. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale through the mouth. Pause. Breathe naturally. Feel this divine love fill up your heart center, overflow to every cell of your body, and pour out into the world. This divine source is unlimited and will never run dry. All you need to do is open up and receive it. As this love flows out into the world, it magnetizes to you blessings, people, prosperity, opportunities, and circumstances that are a resonant match to this high frequency. Feel the joy you'll experience as you receive these manifestations. Stay in this resonance. Memorize the sensation. I open my heart and channel more love into the world. And so it is.